Good morning, Port Wentworth. Good morning, Chatham County. So, this video is in response and opposition to certain inappropriate, libel, and slanderous reporting and information that's circulating that the City of Port Wentworth and the Savannah Morning News want to put out there about me and my mom and my family in particular, about these revenue bonds for Anchor Park, saying that we're trying to hold up the development of Anchor Park out there in the City of Port Wentworth, right? So, let's get the facts straight. At no point in time, did me, my mom, or my family ever say that we didn't think Anchor Park was a positive thing for the city, that we didn't want to see it come into fruition. Me personally, it's positive for the City of Port Wentworth. That's my honest opinion, right? However, here's the issue, right? The issue is our current city council, our previous city council, our current mayor. They've all been, our current city manager, our current attorney. They've all been coerced in some particular way. I ain't gonna say brought, because I don't know specifically, but we're gonna find out, by certain developers to make sure certain things happen, right? In particular, right? The City of Port Wentworth, well, there have been plans to build data centers and industrial warehouses in the City of Port Wentworth on the backside of Saussy Road along Saussy Canal and Black Creek by Steve Brock and Christopher Hayes and Andrew Moody, but specifically for data centers ever since last May that I know of, right? That I know of. And I know that for a fact because I was tipped off by people that I know and trust that work for the federal government and that work for the state government that tipped me off to such, right? And so with that, I was also aware and tipped off to the fact that Steve Davis and Scott Robichaux was cooking up this, what they thought was intelligent idea, right? To use revenue bonds to pay for the infrastructure of data centers in the Port Wentworth Commerce Center, right, on the backside of Saussy Road, right? So the issue and the reason why, yes, we are opposing, in part, that we are opposing the revenue bonds is because when you read the bond language, right, the City of Port Wentworth is actually trying to use the revenue bonds that they claim to be just for the development of Anchor Park, just for the development of the Ghost Pirates facility, right? Just for the development of recreational uses. When you read the bond language, they actually have it baked in there that they can use those same revenue bonds for the development and construction of industrial warehouses and industrial infrastructure to support data centers, right? To instruct data centers, right? So, and the thing is, they are contractually obligated to do so. So again, if you go back and you pull the development agreement between the City of Port Wentworth and SPH LLC, right, which was executed back in 2023, right? I've posted it numerous times. Hell, I'll post it again, right? Within that development agreement, right, the City of Port Wentworth is on hook for providing utility infrastructure, paying for utility infrastructure, especially fiber optics, water and sewer, right, and certain road infrastructure in order to support that development, right? To include the City of Port Wentworth is contractually required to actually secure the permits that's needed to the Georgia DOT in order to get access from off of Highway 21 into the development, right? If you notice, they've cleared the way for a road going into the industrial warehouses area there, all the way up to the guardrail, right? The guardrail is still there. You notice they have not entered the easement of Highway 21. You notice that. Go on over there and look at the Moody development, right? You know why? The reason why is because the City of Port Wentworth, the taxpayers, are the ones that's actually contractually and financially liable, right? And actually required to secure those permits and pay for the ingress and egress off of Highway 21 going into that development, right? Now, they tried to have this groundbreaking and saying that the developer, paid for the traffic light and all that. All that is a lie. Read the contracts, right? But, again, ask yourself a question. Where's the city getting the money from to pay for that required infrastructure to support over 10 million square feet of industrial warehouses? Where are they getting the money from when we can barely pay our bills? Where's the city getting the money from when they can barely pay our employees? Where the city council getting the money from when they can barely pay themselves? Hell, they had to actually not get paid this past November and December because the city ain't had the money to pay them. That's facts. But again, right? Where are they getting the money from? Right? Ask yourself that question. Right? If it ain't in the budget, if we didn't have the money in the budget now, if we didn't have the money in the budget in the last round in last year, how we gonna have where's the money gonna come from in the budget going forward? Right? So I posted along with this video, right, the actual bond resolution and petition and complaint, right, submitted by the state of Georgia, right, within the actual Superior Court case Our Superior Court case number SPCV 25-01149-ST before Judge Stokes there, right? And in the actual, this is actually submitted, right, by the state of Georgia, right, by Shalina Cook Jones, the district attorney, right, this is statutorily required, right? Within this, right, if you actually look at the information, right, if you read through it, right, the specific word industrial is included within the exact same paragraphs 4 different times within the document, right? This is the revenue bonds, right? This is the revenue bond resolution, right? The interagency agreement. This is the whole revenue bond package that the City of Port Wentworth is submitting to the state to allow them to issue more than 50 million. Is actually in a unlimited amount of revenue bonds, right? But the whole thing is they are using revenue bonds to pay for data centers under the cloak of Anchor Park, right? Again, don't take my word for it. You go and read the revenue bond language and look at it for yourself, right? For example, on page 3 of the document, page 3, right? If you look at page 3, the bottom of the first paragraph, the last sentence in the paragraph, right? It says, and I'm going to read it specifically, a project may be for any industrial, commercial, business, office, parking, public, or other use, provided that a majority of the members of the authority, the Port Wentworth Development Authority, determines by a duly adopted resolution that the project and such use thereof would further the public purpose of the act, right? In terms of the Development Authorities Act, right? Now ask yourself this, right? If the revenue bonds were supposed to be exclusively used for the development of Anchor Park, why is the term or the word industrial anywhere within the revenue bond language? Why? There is no land use anywhere between 30 and and I-95 that's zoned industrial. None. There is no intended use of anything around Anchor Park that is zoned industrial or that needs to be in zone industrial. Parking garages are commercial. Arenas are commercial. The pavilion is commercial. Office buildings, commercial. Hotels, commercial. Retail, commercial. So again, what in the Anchor Park area do they need to be zoned commercial, industrial, for the term in the words of industrial to be in the revenue bonds package and the revenue bond resolution and language? All right. Also, ask yourself this question, right? Where is the only area in the city where the current zoning and land use map has a large area zoned for industrial uses? Where's the only area in the city for industrial uses? It's not Anchor Park. It's the Port Wentworth Commerce Center on the backside of Saussy Road. right next door to my mama's house. You think I'm going to let you use a revolving door of revenue bonds to build industrial warehouses next to my mama's house and data centers next to my mama's house and not oppose it? You crazy. And I don't know why you surprised. I told you last year. Since you trying to take my mama property, I'm going to do what I got to do. You just mad and upset that we're doing it the legal way. We ain't hollering. We ain't hooping. We ain't cussing you out. Nope. Everything that we're doing it the correct legal way. Right? And truth be told, no, we're dealing with 4 federal lawsuits right now. Yep. Between us and the City of Port Wentworth, Chatham County, SPA 21 LLC, we got 4 federal lawsuits that we're dealing with right now. And guess what? The city and the county on the ropes right now. Again, don't take my word for it. You go look it up in the United States District Court for the Southern District of Georgia and the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia. It'll come up. And the reason why it's federal is because the City of Port Wentworth aided and abetted Christopher Hayes and SPA 21 LLC and Steve Brock with knowingly submitting my mother's property to the Army Corps of Engineers, to the EPA, and to the state of Georgia, and specifically the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, for the issuance of wetlands permits according to the Clean Water Act Section 404 without her consent. You can't submit permits for property that you don't own, but that's what you did. You can't issue a deed for property that you don't own, but that's what the city and the county did. So hey, again, look, read the information for yourself, right? Read it, all right? And the thing is, again, when you read the bond language, right? Another thing, right? When you read the bond language and in the bond specifically, right? The word industrial and industrial uses appears on page 3, page 20, page 73, and page 107 of the revenue bond package. Read it for yourself, right? But also when you read the bond language, right, they are presenting this as if the bond language is for a one-time use, and it's not, right? The way the bond is written, they issue this one-time bond, right? This one revenue bond issuance, the city would be able, it's a revolving door, which means that the city would be able to issue continuous revenue bonds for industrial, commercial, business, office, parking, and public uses, right? Indefinitely, right? Forever, on the backs of the taxpayers without coming and asking you and I for permission. So, would you give someone an open paycheck to make you pay for something that you didn't approve? Because that's exactly what they're asking for in these bonds. But again, Bitten family. We the black sheep. No, we ain't the black sheep. We are public accountants. We know how to actually look at information, and we carries the one very, very well. I'm a nuclear physicist. I can count a little bit. Okay? I'm a developer. I know a little bit about construction. So, that's my 2 cents this morning. That's the truth. As always, don't trust my word for it. Go read the information for yourself. Hey, and Pat Donovan, keep going, man. Listen, keep holding them accountable. All right? Listen, all we want is the truth. All right? But we don't keep fighting. We don't need no data centers in Port Wentworth. We don't need no data centers in Chatham County. Y'all have a blessed day.